Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Tzipi Livne, nurse and certified food addiction counselor, here on my weekly Facebook Live, which was also going to be uploaded to my YouTube channel, Tzipi Livne GPS to Sugar Free. And so you can catch this either live every Sunday at 2 p.m. Yes, we are changing the time. It is now going to be every Sunday at 2 p.m. Israel time, which is 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, EDT, 7 hours difference. And I am here to help you on your journey to a sugar-free life, especially if you are Jewish, traditional, and you keep kosher. So this weekly live will be, in general, giving people tips and motivation how to live a sugar-free life. And also it will be more towards some of the vlogs, especially if they will be around the Jewish holiday times. So it's to help you guys, get through Jewish holidays, Jewish cultural events, and have you motivate you to help you if you are one of those people who really, really want to limit very much or completely eliminate added sugars to your life in order to live the wonderful life that is a sugar-free life, because it is so sweet. So one of my favorite subjects is helping people to know what sugar is. So many times when I do my workshops, like my GPS to sugar-free workshop or program for private people or for couples, people don't really know how much sugar they're ingesting. And this can be a real problem because people think they're eating healthy and they're actually eating a lot more sugar than they think. So I have decided that today's vlog, and probably next week and maybe even the week after, is going to be dedicated to helping you in that jungle of sugars that you can meet when it comes to choosing which foods you're putting into your mouth. One of the places I've read tons of research and books, and there's so much material out there today, especially in English, so it's really wonderful. It's really, really easy for you to educate yourself about the different sugars. And if people are talking about it, I'm happy to say, more and more. Michael Moss just went out a book about how the food industry is hooking us on these sugars. One of my great heroes, Dr. Robert Lustig, talks so much about the different sugars and the toxicity of different sugars. And he's coming out with a new book very, very soon in May, Metabolical it's called. And he's had this amazing YouTube video that I suggest people watch. I think everyone should watch it, calling The Bitter Truth About Sugar. But here's the thing, then people start asking me, well, what about fruit? Or, I looked at a can of tomato sauce, like just plain tomato sauce on the jar, and it says that it's 100% tomatoes, but when I looked at the nutritional facts, it says there that there's a lot of sugar in it. So like, Zippy, what's the deal? So people get really confused. Are dates healthy or not healthy? Well, if dates are healthy, what about date syrup? There's so much confusion about the different sugars and if they're healthy or not. So I want to help you, maybe help you so that your decision making will be an informed decision making and you will know what you're putting in your mouth. So when we talk about eating sugar, it's very, very important to first understand the difference between sugar that is naturally in a food versus the sugar that is added to our foods by the food industry or when we make our own food. So that will be the first thing that's very important to discern. For example, if we'll take those tomatoes, okay? Tomatoes have natural sugars in them. Same as fruit. Fruit also have natural sugars in them, okay? So, and the truth is that my clients who completely detox from all added sugars and flours, you bite into a cherry tomato, when your palate is already habituated to real food and isn't hijacked by all this sweet stuff that we're eating, then a cherry tomato is really sweet. So even vegetables have natural sugars in them. Grains have natural sugars in them, whole grains. If you make a pot of, wheat, as a side dish, you cook wheat in your chillant. You put wheat or barley in your chillant, right? Or if you're eating a fruit. So in all these foods, there are natural sugars that occur in these fruits. And the reason why these are still considered real food, and these foods can be healthy, maybe not for everyone, maybe sometimes certain people have to limit them, especially if you want to go sugar-free and you're addicted to sugar. There are certain, even natural sugars that we'll want to limit, but in general, we have to discern between these natural sugars and added sugars. So these natural sugars occur in the food itself while the food is growing. These natural sugars are in the food together with our nutritional fibers. And the fibers make these sugars absorb into the body gradually and not all at once. And that's a very important thing, because it's not just how much sugar and not even which sugar we're ingesting, but it's one of the critical questions is how fast that sugar is getting absorbed into the body. If it's getting absorbed gradually or if it's getting absorbed all at once. So when the sugars occur naturally in a food, and that food isn't too highly concentrated with sugar, we'll get to that in a minute, then we can assume that the sugars that we're ingesting sugars, but they're going to be ingested and absorbed gradually. That's very important. Then we have the sugars that are added into our food, even the natural sugars. Now, even from the sugars that are added to our foods, we have to discern between two basic kinds of sugars. And those are the fructose-based sugars and the glucose-based sugars. The fructose-based sugars are the sugars that are sweet. And now, fructose-based sugar is sugar cane, fruit juice, honey, maple syrup, date syrup. Sugar is sugar is sugar. Once the sugar is added, even if it comes from a natural source, our body, there's no fibers there to slower the absorption. Our body absorbs that sugar all at once. The fructose-based sugars usually have those two basic building blocks of sugar, glucose and fructose together. Well, soon in a minute we'll talk about the glucose-based sugars, but the fructose-based sugars are the ones that have a sweet taste. Fruit also has fructose in it, the sweet sugar, but again, it's incorporated into a food that had and within the fiber. So what we want to do is, if we're going to eat fructose-based sugars, it should be only in natural fruit. It should be limited, because even so, the fructose is the sugar that when we eat too much of it, and especially if we eat the foods and beverages and we drink the beverages that have high fructose-based sugars in them, fructose is the sugar that is toxic. It causes our fatty liver disease. It causes us to accumulate fat in our liver. Some of that fat also goes into the bloodstream and causes high lipids in our blood and heart disease and dementia and metabolic disease like hypertension and diabetes, of course, and obesity. It's the most fattening food we have in our system today, in our food system today, and especially, of course, when it is added into the foods that we are eating. So it's very important to discern between sugars that come naturally in foods versus sugars that are added. And from the sugars that are added, the fructose-based sugars are the most toxic. They are the ones that we have to be most careful about. So even with a fruit also, if we're talking about the concentration of the sugars, then it is very clear that a fruit like berries, which have a low concentration of fructose-based sugars, versus raisins or dried fruit or dates that are very, very highly concentrated in sugars. So those are the places within the natural sugars that we have to pay attention to. Okay, but if we're going to talk about now if we're going to talk about the fructose-based sugars that are added to our foods, we're talking about, first of all, the sugary drinks, including natural fruit juices. That means that we're ingesting very, very quickly a high amount of fructose-based sugars, and it's really very unhealthy. And if you think it's bad for adults, where it's really terrible for kids because their liver and their metabolic systems are not developed like adults. And the harms that it causes these children are far reaching and really in so many areas. So let's be really, really stingy if we don't eliminate completely the fructose-based sugars. That means the sweet taste sugars like sugar, agave, especially fruit concentrates that are added, like those natural fruit jams and the natural fruit that they put in yogurts. Those are really the most toxic kind of sugars. And of course, all sweetened beverages are really, really, really bad. So these are the places. If you want to know if there's one place that I'm just like super fanatic about, it's about the sweetened beverages. That is like it's like I tell my kids, if you're going to put a bottle of Coca-Cola on the table, you may as well put a box of Marlboro cigarettes. It's the same thing. It really is the same harms. And the research is coming out more and more about this and about the addictive nature of these sweetened sugars. So even if it's honey or maple or date syrup, you have to know maybe they're a little tiny bit more natural than the other added sugars, but sugar is sugar. It's addictive and it's fattening. Then we have the glucose-based sugars. The glucose-based sugars are the ones that don't taste sweet, but they're sugar, and they're ingested in our body as sugar. They also raise our blood sugar levels, and they cause insulin to be secreted so that, the insulin in our body basically takes those sugars and deals with them. So when we're eating too much glucose-based sugars, we also have too much insulin in our body. And when we have too much insulin in our body, it causes inflammation. It causes fat to be produced in our body because insulin causes our body to make more fat, and it tells our body also not to burn the fat that it has. So what are the glucose-based sugars? Those are the sugars that come in white flour, in starches, in usually it's used in the food industry as a kind of a sugar that is used to make the consistency better. Right? So it'll make something smoother without adding fat to it. All these low-fat things usually will have added starches and all these glucose-based sugars to sort of make it a better consistency, maybe give it a longer shelf life, give it a better, so these are the glucose-based sugars, and they're also really not good for you. Now, the glucose that comes in a whole grain, if it's the whole grain itself, right? And it hasn't been pulverized into a flour. That's a whole different thing. For example, if you eat beans, right? Beans have these glucose-based sugars in them, but it's part of a very high fiber food, and it's incorporated into a whole food that has also tons of other really, really good stuff in it. So when you're eating carbohydrates, these are what called the carbohydrates, right? When you're eating carbohydrates, but you're eating a whole food, it's a whole different story. There are carbohydrates in vegetables too. Root vegetables are higher in carbohydrates sometimes, So if you drink carrot juice, that's really not good. You basically took out the fiber and just left the sugar and some minerals and a little bit of vitamins. But, how many carrots do you need to make a glass of carrot juice? Are you ever going to eat 10 carrots in 30 seconds? No. But a carrot has some sugar in it, right? But it's like a great thing to take a bite out of. So it's very, very important to understand that when we're eating sugars that come as part of a whole natural food, real food, it's a whole different ballgame than we're talking about the sugars that are added. When we're talking about the sugars that are added, the fructose-based sugars, the ones that are sweet, are the most toxic. But let's not fool ourselves and think that when we're eating these starchy, floury, glucose-based sugars that it's okay and it's a healthy food. It's really not like that. So how do you know? read the ingredients. When you read the ingredients, right, and learn the different names that the food industry has given to the sugars, because there are about 60 different names that really, for our body, it's sugar. And the food industry, even on purpose, hides the sugars that they put in the foods in order to make us think that we're eating something healthy when it's really not so. So don't let anybody fool you. Okay, you become educated and learn the different names of the sugar. Learn to read the ingredients of anything before you put it in your mouth. And if you want like just one rule of thumb that will help you on your sugar-free journey, it's eat real food. Eat the food that God and Mother Nature intended us to eat. If you look at a food and it doesn't need a food aid label, you don't need to read any food label to know exactly what you're putting in your mouth. That's real food. So for today, we've talked about the differences in natural sugars and added sugars. From the added sugars, the difference of fructose-based and glucose-based sugars. And thank you for the viewers who are here. If you're watching this, please send a like, add your comments on this video. If you're watching this on my Facebook channel, then I'd love to hear what you think about it. And you're welcome to come here every Sunday at 2 p.m. Israel time. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel, well, then please subscribe and like this video and click that notification button. And then every time that I upload my weekly Facebook Live, Sunday at 2, you will get notified and you'll know about it. So have a great week, everybody. Love you guys. Bye-bye.